So here's the problem. This floor looks like it was coated with some kind of incorrect polyurethane or something, and it's really chipped up very quickly, easy to scratch, and is in pretty poor shape. I'm going to use my standard Makita orbital sander. If you remove the bag from the orbital sander, you'll find that this attachment fits your normal 2.5-inch shop vac hose very nicely. And then I'm going to start off using some 60 grit sandpaper, of course, as well as normal safety equipment like my breathing mask, and attach this right to my shop vac. Actually, this is going a lot better than my fears thought it would be. You can see that with the orbital sander connected to the shop vac, it's doing a pretty good job with that 60 grit. Of course, I'll have to smooth it out a little more than that. And I have it vented right out the window. I got some rags in there and some rags under nearby doors to prevent any other dust, but most of the dust is getting sucked out pretty nicely. So I'm going to continue with this 60 grit, and I think I'm going to slide this washing machine over to the left so that I can get underneath there and see how that goes. Here's a couple of interesting developments. It turns out that whoever did this floor incorrectly last time never did put the polyurethane, or I think it might be Minwax poly stain that they used, but they never did put it underneath the washer and dryer unit. So all I've done now is just remove the front panel and push the left side in so that I could get underneath there as well as possible. In an ideal situation, I'd pull the whole unit out of there and do the floor, but I do have a lazy streak. Also, to get along these edges, I found, and also the edges underneath the washer dryer, I found that I needed to use another tool that I already have, which is this Ryobi sander. They have a number of these, like the Black & Decker mouse, that can really get into the corners. So I'm just going to go around, do all the corners now, and then go back to my orbital sander. There you can see how amazing it is what you can do in about 20 seconds with an orbital sander, and a good camera. Now I'm going to go back over everything. I started with 60 grit, and I'm going to go back over everything with about 80 grit, and then go to 100 grit before I put down any stain. Okay, here's the sanded floor. I sanded with 60 grit, 80 grit, and 120 grit, and then vacuumed it. And I'll certainly hit it with a tack cloth before I try to put on the stain. Here's the stain I chose to use, by the way. It's just a Minwax Golden Oak stain, which should give it a pretty light color. This will be a good way to seal and protect the wood before I put the polyurethane on there. So here we have the floor with the stain on and the first coat of polyurethane on, which I applied with a lamb's wool applicator pad. That was very cool. I'm going to put another coat on if this one ever dries. Okay, so here we are 24 hours later, and as you can see, I'm in the process of just sanding down lightly sanding. It looks worse than it is because of all the powder, but lightly sanding down the previous finish with some 150 grit sandpaper so that the next and final application of polyurethane will stick. I did find an awful lot of black hair that somehow made its way into the top layer of the drying polyurethane. I have no idea where that came from. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I know where the black hair came from. Fenway? Is that from you? Yeah. That's right, Moose. It came from Fenway, didn't it? Can you speak? That's right. You betcha. Okay, so here we are all sanded for the second time. But it's worth pointing out a couple of things I don't think I mentioned. Number one, this second sanding, it's just a light sanding, just to scuff up the surface. It removes any dog hair and any bubbles. And about those bubbles, it's really important when you have your opened gallon of polyurethane that you don't shake it in any way. You stir it lightly with a stick. You don't want to shake it in any way that'll cause bubbles, or even when you're pouring it into the applicator, or you'll get bubbles. Okay, so we have all this dust on there. Let's see what happens when we take the tack cloth and remove some of this dust. That sticky old tack cloth, 2 for $1.79 at your local big box hardware store, and they're worth their weight in gold. It's just like a magnet to that dust. I can't say that I was entirely convinced when my friend told me to use a lamb's wool pad applicator to put the polyurethane down. He was 100% right. That's definitely the way to go. It puts it on nice and smooth. And again, it's something from your local hardware store. Well, like I said before, it's really important to just stir this polyurethane, maybe with a stick or something, a clean stick, so that you don't get any bubbles in it. Because any bubbles in the can or any bubbles in the tray will end up on the surface of your floor. So this is pretty good. I actually stirred it a little while ago. I've also taken some measures to make sure my feet were clean, because keeping this floor real clean is primary to keeping this thing smooth. Alright, get this out of the way. Oops, I'll paint myself in a corner. Get everything I need out of here, so I won't be back. Here we go. Well, I see even with that being careful, there was still some bubbles in there. And I'm probably creating a few more now, but I'm trying to be careful. Here's a lamb's wool applicator. With the pad, the pad was about $7 or $8, including the pad and the lamb's wool applicator. And you can get additional pads for $3 or $4. Alright, here we go. This is pretty cool. Thin coats. I think lifting up this pad is also a recipe for creating bubbles. So I try to leave it on the ground the whole time.